Alright, welcome back to another Flask video. Today it's going to be a pretty brief one, but we're going to talk about what is the super function and template inheritance in Flask. Before we get started, if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. That way you don't miss any future videos that you might find interesting or useful. And then go check out my other Flask videos if you haven't already. We're creating, in the end, a character counter application, which I've also done with two other frameworks. And this is a fun little project just to create the same thing in different frameworks and just to see how they differ. But before we get to creating the application, I've been going through some Flask basics, and in the last video we talked about template inheritance. So we have different blocks, and then we have our parent template here, the index.html. Today we're going to talk about what is the super function and what does it do. So if we remember, we have different blocks in our parent template, but we also put something inside of those blocks which is going to be our default value. So if we have something like our about page, which extends the index.html and has a default value, if we don't put anything for this content block, it's going to automatically put this h2 here in its place. But in our case, in our example before, we took the content block and instead we said hello from the about page. What if the case is we want to show our own custom content block and we also want to keep what's in there by default and call that and display that as necessary? Well, that's where the super function comes into play. Super just basically says, hey, whatever's in there by default, let's display that here. So for this block content, I'm going to go back to our about.html where we define in the about.html what the content block is. And then right below our h2 hello from the about page, let's in two curly braces, open and close, put super and then call that function. And so what this is going to do, it's going to go back to our index.html. It's going to copy basically this h2 and paste it into here because that was what was in there by default. And now if we serve this up and we go to our /about to serve up the about page, notice how now we see this h2 hello from the main page. And if we compare it side by side, it put what we defined in the content block right here, the h2 hello from the about page. It called the super function, which took what was in there by default, placed it right here, and then it went on to the next block that we call test. And that's basically it. Super just calls the parent template and what's inside that parent block, if anything. So hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video.